Well, welcome to our meeting. I'm about the article a little bit, but on the facilitator, I apologize for my voice is soft and garbled because of my medication. You can't hear, understand me, ask me to speak up and speak more slowly. Racism is a slogan of the group Erace, which was founded in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. Seek ways through person-to-person communication that show we were committed to meeting all human beings with love, respect, empathy, and compassion, and humility. Join us. Racism organizations does not expose any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We will acceptance of all people and personal attacks of any kind of economy. I would mutually to do that. We come to the with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. I see on the screen. Phyllis?
Good morning, I'm Phyllis. I've been coming to Erace since 2008 and I live in New Orleans. And Bill, don't forget the land acknowledgement.
I will do that.
Okay.
I missed the order after the introductions. I will read the Nancy? You're
Normally, y'all don't get to me. I'm Nancy. I've been coming to Erace since June of 2007, and I am in the New Orleans area.
Thank you. Stanton?
Good morning, I'm Stanton in Austin, and I've been coming for just about over a year now. Thanks.
Thank you. Teresa?
Hi, I'm Teresa Roberson. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've been coming since last August.
Thank you. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise, been coming to Erace meetings for over 2 decades, first in New Orleans, now in Austin.
Thank you. Marion?
Good morning again, everybody. I'm Marion. I live in New Orleans. I attended the very first Erace meeting in June of 1993. And I have been coming ever since. Looking forward to this morning's discussion. It's good to see everyone. Hope everybody's doing well.
Larry?
Good morning, I'm Larry. Good morning to everybody. Glad to be here this morning.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. Cindy? You're muted. Cindy, you're muted.
All right, we'll try again. I'm never sure which way we're going. I'm Cindy Morse. I live in New Orleans. I've been involved maybe 4 or 5 years. I'll try to find out more accurately. Thanks.
I want to read the land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral unceded territory that many indigenous people that were here, and there were many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group, they on the lands of Chimichacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, Tonawanda, Wapan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin. The Page and Castaway in Washington, D.C., the Wampanoag, the Nemac peoples in Boston, the Kahlua and Mojave and Riverside, and Lumbee and Fayetteville. To thank our ancestors being Jewish, religious and brought through generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history of these people and places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on the indigenous land. There will always be indigenous land. I want to add a footnote. We were watching a spy movie, World War II, transatlantic, and there was African working in the hotel. And one of the white people asked where he's from. He said, I'm from the kingdom of Damai. It's now known as the French Somali, but it was the kingdom of Damali. That's another colonialism. So let me go over the rules. Last, I want you to keep yourself mute unless you're talking. The list is kept and people are called on in order to facilitate. Raise one hand, finger to be put on a list. People speak in the order of the list. 2 minutes each turn. And don't interrupt the speaker. And they make side comments. And no personal attacks, no rain calling. The point of the discussion is to listen, learn, and argue constructively. After a speaker is finished, you can raise 2 fingers and you go out of order and ask a clarifying question, but not to give your opinion. The questions are to clarify what the speaker said. If you want to give your opinion, get on the list again. So I will tell you, I see Glenn just joined us in Marvin. Glenn, you want to introduce yourself?
Glenn Abdullah, been with Erace since 94. Glad to be here this morning.
Thank you. Marva.
Good morning. My name is Marva. I joined Erace post Katrina. Looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. I chose this article as Cindy was reading the book, or that wasn't going to sign the book. I looked at a number of book reviews to find one. I rejected a lot of them because I wanted to give a good summary. I found this book review in a medical journal. It talks about the public health implications of white racialism resentments on the whites who are doing the resenting. It goes through 3 issues. First, gun access. And the article points out that 8% of gun suicides are by white men. And also I would add, most mass shooters are done by white men. And I had a cousin who took his life by gun. And a gun. And I have 2 family members. Cindy and I have a good friend who shot herself. And I have read that people who survive the suicide attempt, something like 80–90%, were glad they survived. With a gun, you don't survive. The other thing is medical access. And I was not surprised to read in a focus group that low-income white men explained they would rather die than give minority groups or immigrants more access to health care. They would rather die than give health care people of color. So they're dying. And then education, lack of funding for education, that affects white schools, white people, especially in poor rural neighborhoods. So they consistently vote against their self-interest because their racism blinds them to what's going on. So I'll say more in the end, but I'm going to try to take time. Hopefully you can hear my alarm. So the list is open. Teresa. Anyone else now? Ellis. Anyone else? Marion. Okay, we'll start with those three. So let me get my timer set up. Here we go. Sorry. Get it set up right.
Are you ready, Bill, for me to start?
I am. I'm
Okay,
just
cool.
setting up my timer.
So I read this book years ago, but I still, when I think about this book, I think of those two great philosophers, Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. Over 20 years ago, Chris Rock was talking about how no white guy would trade places with him, and he's rich. And he said that white men just think, I'm just gonna keep working this white thing. It's gonna come through for me, And then more recently, Dave Chappelle once told a white man that Trump liked him, Chappelle, better than the white guy. He said, because I'm rich. Trump doesn't like poor people. And Trump doesn't care what race you are. He likes people with money. And I think about that because it took me a long time. I grew up thinking, okay, you got to work twice as hard to get half as much as white people, and you don't want to, be that black shiftless stereotype and whatever. I was an adult when I realized that it's if a white supremacist is going to hate you, they're going to hate you because you're an accomplished black person, because it really, really makes them feel like you've displaced some more qualified white person and that you didn't deserve it. And um, I was watching, I think it was a documentary about Bill Russell. I'm not a sports fan, but I love watching documentaries. And if this was the black player who played for the Bolton Celtics, then it's on Netflix. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is one, that his father, who I think worked in a factory, couldn't get a raise. And his boss just straight up told him, if I gave you a raise, you'd make as much as the white people, and that wouldn't do. And it's not just white anger, it's white anger would lead to violence. And how he, as a professional basketball player, one of the star players, people would root for him when he was on the court, but did not want them to live by them or in their
Teresa,
neighborhood. Oh, my
you
2 minutes are
get
up?
back on this. Do you hear
Yes,
my
I'll get back.
alarm?
No, not at all. But okay, I'll get back on the list. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bill, do you want me to keep time for you?
that'd be great.
Okay.
So Phyllis, it's your turn.
Yeah, Teresa reminded me, I heard Chris Rock make a joke that maybe it's along the same lines of what she was talking about, that if Bill Gates had Oprah money, he'd kill himself because he would consider himself poor. So that was a eye-opening statement. I want to say this helped me in some way, like understand but not agree with or accept what some white people seem to think in this country right now. When I watch why can't I think of his name? The guy from the Daily Show who goes out to all the Trump rallies and interviews
Oh,
people.
Jordan Klepper.
Thank you. I'm often like, how are those people like so illogical? But they're being taught, one, to fear and hate other people, whether it's Black people or trans people or gay people or whoever Fox News and the other ones try to get them to be afraid of. Or yeah. And then we wonder why we have people now just shooting people for making innocent mistakes. It was mind-blowing this past week, all at once, and then they happen frequently, I'm sure, but just all those that made the news where people just made mistakes. And the girls who accidentally got in the wrong car, I had a white friend, we were in Ohio, we both worked at the public library, we were getting off work, we went outside, our parents were picking us up, and she jumped in the front seat of a car. She's white. The driver of that car was not her parent, it was a Black man. And she said he looked freaked out. And she said, oh, sorry, and jumped out of the car again. But yeah, I heard that, Louise. So that's it for now.
You want to get back on the list? Marion,
There was a statement, this was a great article and a great read as well. But in the article, it said there are people who believe that they are at the top of the perceived social hierarchy, and they're blind to the fact that they can be harmed. And I immediately thought about 2020, and the word sheep came to mind when I saw that crowd in Washington that were incited to come by number 45. And then there was something else in the article that said the people were talking about freedom, liberty, and patriotism. It's so unfortunate that people can be so easily led, but as it says in the article that you encourage us to read, Bill, it says they're blind to the fact that while they think that they're at the top of this social hierarchy, they can be harmed. And it's just so pitiful, and it's unnecessary. Why are you putting yourself at risk? Why are you causing this unnecessary trauma to people who have always been at the bottom of the ladder? And because you perceive that you're the big mucky muck, that you should be at the top of the ladder. So it's unfortunate, it's unnecessary, and it's just downright tragic that this is going on in our country, even as we're having this discussion here. It's really tragic, sad, unnecessary, and it bothers me to a great extent, because all of this upheaval is just totally unnecessary.
thank you, Marion. I restrain myself, but every time someone talks, I wanted to comment on it. I'll save my comments to the end. Stanton, I see you on the list.
Oh,
Teresa,
sorry. And Gigi.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Greer put her hand up before me, so I'm gonna let Greer go ahead of me.
I couldn't see her hand. So, Greer, when you go, I want you to say, introduce yourself as well, if you don't mind. We all know who you are, but everyone has to have a chance to introduce themselves. So it's Teresa, Greer, and Stanton.
Okay, so this book helped explain to me, at least, why I kept having certain conversations as a health insurance agent during ACA. And I would a few incidences. I enrolled someone into an ACA plan. I remember this one woman in particular. I got her a plan that paid about $13 a month, which was excellent because she had pre-existing conditions. And after reading the statement, there's a attestation statement that I had to read, and this is all over the phone. And as soon as we finished, it was like a switch flipped in her head. And she's like, this isn't that Obamacare crap, is it?
Hmm.
And Obamacare, Trump care, whatever you want to call it, those are nicknames for an ACA plan. And so I said, ma'am, we just enrolled you into an ACA plan. And she's like, oh, okay. I was just as happy as a clam. And I just thought to myself, Lord have mercy. You know, if I would have agreed with her to call it by its nickname, then would she not have gotten this coverage? And I don't know what race she is because really it doesn't matter, but somebody who's willing to bet against their own interest. And there was another guy who he was kind of just like kicking the tires. He just wanted to see what was out there. I didn't enroll him, but he was not happy by the end of our conversation to figure out. I mean, I basically joked with him. I said, well, if you don't want an ACA plan, can you get a job to get a plan through your work, or maybe if you're lucky, hit the lottery? But that's where we're at. We're at fundraisers and that type of thing. But he was very upset that he had voted Republican. And I told him health insurance isn't run by political parties. The same plans that are available, even if you never vote, is for everyone. But I got tired of the political conversation. All I wanted to do was sell people health insurance. And I'm getting into these conversations. I've heard languages, or I should say language, that I know over the phone I sound white. You guys have the benefit of seeing my picture, but I thought, wow, this is what white people talk about when they don't, when there's not a black person around, but they're saying it to me. So
Teresa, you want to get back on the list?
I'll wait. Thank you.
Greer, it's your turn next. Then Stanton.
Okay, good morning. I'm Greer. I've been an Erace member since post-Katrina, I think around 2008. And I like coming here every morning. Well, not every morning, but every Saturday morning, just to hear what everybody has to say. This article was like very interesting, and it goes to even prove even more so
You lost your audio, Greer.
genius countries.
You're not muted.
Like
You lost your audio. Then I see you.
Greer, you're cutting out. We're missing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Put you back on the list.
Maybe it's Marva's back.
Okay, so we'll get back to her.
I have Stanton, Glenn, and Greer. And Larry.
The book, Ship of Fools by Catherine Ann Porter was made into a movie in the 60s. And it was about this luxury cruise liner going to Nazi Germany from the United States in the 30s and after Hitler came to power. And there's a conversation between two characters, Lee Marvin and Vivian Leigh. And Lee Marvin is a Southerner and Vivian Leigh is a British upper class wealthy person. And Lee Marvin says to her, I don't understand why Hitler and the Germans hate the Jews so much. Well, why do they hate them so much? And she said, well, you don't understand that because you're too busy lynching Negroes. And I think the whole point of that is that societies where people are trying to control and gain power over the masses will use a ploy of singling out a group, targeting a group, so that the other people can rally behind that hate. And it's for the goal and the desire of power. I don't care if it was in this country that white Southerners and segregationists tried to rile up white people for power. That's what the purpose was. It's what's going on in Florida today with the governor. I think it happened in Rwanda when the Hutus did the same thing about the Tutsi and just started calling them all kinds of names, cockroaches, and degrading them to the point where there was the unfortunate situation there. It's the masking of brute force of power that people are trying to accomplish and using stupid people as their pawns is how I see it. So yeah, back to what Marion said, the sheep. Yeah, it's easy to herd sheep. It's not so easy to herd.
Dan, you want to get back on the list? Glenn, it's your turn.
Well, I'm thankful to Donald Trump for bringing this kind of people to the surface. I didn't know they were there. I mean, I know we had a minority of them there, but I didn't know we had a big minority like this. And we had and got Obama as president. Whew, I thought it was, I thought we were, we didn't have this kind of stuff. I thought it'd been impossible if we had all these many people, millions of Trump people out there, and he got to be president. So and another thing is, I don't get the logic of why are you gonna vote? Why are you gonna vote for something that's gonna hurt your own self? How you gonna, you hear they want to get rid of Social Security? Yeah, I'm gonna vote for that because I got blacks on Social Security. I want to get them up. Are we going to you all for not paying the debt? So that means you don't get your Social Security check when you don't pay the debt. All these many things, became crazy over Obamacare, and now they love it. So it's really insane, but it's good to see it come to the surface so we can deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Greer, it's your turn. No, yeah, you get your audio working now?
Well, actually, I don't know what it is, but it's something that happens at 10:30 every Saturday that
Oh,
causes this to happen, which is crazy. I've timed it many times, but it's sometimes it's not as bad as others. But let me get back on the subject. In homogeneous countries where people are more alike, there's better sharing and there's less things like this. And even in countries where there's like a small minority of others who are foreign to the area, they really don't have a problem with it. But there's a tipping point to which white people are going to be okay with it. We did an article, I forgot how long ago it was, and it said that like when those Feed the Children commercials come on, that if they had one child, white people would be more willing to donate. But if you added a second or a third time, that the donations would like drop like 80%. And it just made me remember when they were talking about the guy who interviews these people. There was a guy in one of those clips where he asked, I forgot the guy's name because you said it earlier. He was like, well, he said, what do you think about Obama during 9/11? He was like, well, we need to look into that. He said, well, what do you think he was doing? I don't know, probably on vacation. And so the guy goes, well, Obama wasn't even in office during 9/11. He said, oh, we need to look into that. That was hilarious. But it's that mentality of I deserve and you don't. because this is how this country was founded. I'll get back on. Put me back on, Bill.
Yeah, you're back on. The list is now Larry, Louise, and Greer. And Phyllis.
Yes, thank you.
Larry, it's your turn.
Thank you. A lot of what we're dealing with is just plain evil. You know, we remember the Watergate situation with Richard Nixon. It wasn't so much the crime, but the cover-up that got him in trouble. And we're dealing with a massive cover-up today, trying to cover up evil. I was listening to historian Douglas Brinkley the other day and discussing matters of this type and the anger that is coming out amongst the Republican right wingers. And he stated that a lot of this anger stems from the 1619 Project. A lot of the anger stems from the 1619 Project. So I went back to the 1619 book and I read this particular portion. It says in early 1775, James Madison, who operated a slave labor camp in Orange County, Virginia, reported hearing a rumor that British Parliament had introduced a bill to emancipate the colonists enslaved. In addition, a report from the Virginia House of Burgesses accused British officials of contemplating a most diabolical scheme to offer freedom to our slaves and turn them against their masters. And so it is evident why they want to take a lot of books out of the libraries and out of the school system that white kids could get their hands on, because this massive lie that the American Revolution was fought because of some independence from Great Britain or whatever, it was fought over slavery. It was fought because the colonists did not want to free their slaves. And this is the aftermath of what we're fighting to this day. It is coming against manifest destiny, where white men thought that they were destined by God to rule the whole world. And I'll pause. Get me back on the list, please.
Yeah. Louise, it's your turn.
Hold on. Let me just put the timer on. So my comments actually is spurned from what people have said so far. Teresa, I thought it was interesting that you said people talk to you differently if they can't see your face because you think you have a white sounding voice. I have a white looking face, but they do not know my background. And so, yes, I've had people just such blatant racist comments and expect me to, go along with it. And of course I don't. But anyway, that was a big comment. And then Glenn, you said that they've come out, all of these Trumpers have come out from under stones. Yeah, absolutely. And it's terrifying. It's like seeing one cockroach, but knowing that there's friggin' millions underneath the floorboards, So that's very, very frightening. And Larry, I don't think it's evil that we're dealing with. Well, on some level, definitely. But the biggest part is the stupid people, whoever said that as well. I think Marion, stupidity and ignorance. And of course, money. That's another one. Power. And did anyone read or hear about this new gun they're making that has a safety? Again, I'm ignorant as to what that all entails. But what I got from it was that it will at least save, like when kids play with daddy's gun, that it will stop it going off, which is, a good thing. If we're not going to be banning anything, then at least try to make them safe. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting point. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Greer, it's your turn. Grease, I see you.
I'm just sort of going to piggyback on what Mr. Larry said. It's this, like I said, this country was founded on white superiority. The Indians were subjugated. The indigenous who weren't Indians were subjugated. the captives who they stole and brought over here were subjugated to the point to where their freedom was taken. And notice when indentured servants look like them, they actually got a way out of slavery. But the Africans that they stole didn't. So it's been a constant theme with this government that has legislated that minorities are to be subjugated through laws, statutes, or whatever. But at the same time, it required us to pay into a system where we can't get out what we paid into it. And we still don't get out what we pay into this system. During like the campaign with Herbert Hoover, he was like appealing to the poor masses. We're going to get a chicken in every pot. And they thought they deserved that chicken more than anybody else. Everybody was struggling then. But people feel that they deserve more than others. As African Americans in this country, we've eked out a way, even though there was none, even though we shouldn't have had to, because as citizens, we should have had access to everything. But the minute we stop working for free, we're lazy. But yet, white men in this country think that everything is owed to them. And that's why people vote against their best interest, because they think they're owed everything. And if we got to work for it, they should get it for free. That's it.
Thank you, Rhea. Phyllis, it's your turn.
Well, first I want to say there's a concept that came over with the Puritans called the worthy versus the unworthy poor. And basically it's the idea that, like, you know, if you're ill, a woman, well, let's say ill, a widow or an orphan, you are worthy of receiving care. If you are an able-bodied person, a man especially, you are not worthy of receiving care or aid or benefits. And that has carried up to this day, and now is especially applied by accusing a certain population of being, like someone said, lazy. I'm like, how are the people who built the country from the ground up being accused of being lazy? That makes no sense. And this idea of like the social hierarchy, there's a show on Prime right now based on a book I read called The Power. And in it, women all across the world develop a new organ kind of up in their clavicle region that enables them to create electricity. And they can then shock just by touching somebody and disable them. So it upsets the power balance of men and women. And it shows how this happens all around the world, and the, you know, how different people react to it, how some men are like, yes, we can have equality. And some men are like, we got to put these women down. And they start testing women to see who has it and who doesn't. And also, if a woman didn't develop it, it can be given to her by another woman. And it just is, I recommend the book, I recommend the show. That is always going to be the case. The people who are used to power, it's on Prime, Louise, Amazon
Thanks.
Prime. The people who are used to power it's going to have to be wrenched from them, and they're not going to like it. But too bad, so sad.
This, Larry is next, and then Teresa. After that, Elizabeth Open. Stanton.
Yes, Louise, I use the term evil, and this is what it is. We're not dealing with stupidity and ignorance. We're dealing with evil, and we can't have an honest discussion on some matters, particularly as they relate to the advancement of people, without talking about right and wrong, good and bad, light and darkness, evil and good. You know, we can't have this conversation about race unless we bring evil into the process. And so if it was not of God, then it had to be of evil, to enslave a people, treat them as subhumans. And that is something that we don't want to deal with, sometimes even on erase, you know, any racism. We'd rather not deal with the depths of the evil that this nation is wrapped up in, even to this day. You know, and sometimes even our conversations, a lot of our conversations on erase focuses on the victims rather than pointing out the evils that caused these victims. And so, you know, consequently, sometimes we have kind of backed away from talking about this evil and tried to embrace the conversation of racism and a lot of other subjects, you know, like abortion and killing of babies. And we wonder why people on the street are killing each other. You know, the LGBTQ, not to say that those things should not be discussed, they should, you know, but we're trying to encompass too much, you know, in this discussion when we haven't dealt with the evil of racism yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Teresa, and then Stanton, and then Glenn.
All right. Phyllis, if you haven't seen Luke Cage on Netflix, you have? Okay, I was gonna say if you like the power, you'll like the concept of a bulletproof black man, because throughout the entire series, everybody's trying to shoot that black man. And they got perfect casting because he is big and he is very dark. I think he's absolutely gorgeous, which is not part of the point, but anyway. I think of I also saw one of the silver linings of Trump being president because I had to find something. It's like I can't be 4 years angry. Um, is it did certain conversations that were repressed. You know, it was almost like the pendulum swung too far the other way, where when we had Obama as the president, everybody's like, oh, we're post-racial. And I was just like, who? I think that was just people tired of talking about race. You know, it's like finally we can table that. I even wrote a piece when Trump became president. I said, can you now admit that
Larry,
racism
I see you.
is still there or it's back or whatever? But I look at uh, Trump supporters as having cult behavior. It's
Big
not
time.
it's not so much stupidity, it's part desperation. Even if you showed them the facts, a lot of the just like the Dominion case, a lot of people who watch Fox News, if they only watch Fox News, they are not hearing about the defamation case. Even if they did, they don't really care. What they get is confirmation bias.
Mara,
So
I'm
if
sorry.
you've got this cult mentality, then nothing anybody I shouldn't say anybody, because one of the ways to get a loved one out of a cult is that you are somebody that they trust and that you can break them out of such a cult. But my goodness, Trump lost by the biggest presidential turnout in our country's history. How many of those voters have some of a loved one who voted for Biden or somebody else who could just like talk them through everything?
And it's your turn. Thanks, Teresa.
I may be going off subject a little bit, but I think there's a distinction to be made between irrational hatred of other people based on their color or based on their origin or based on their religion versus exploitation of human labor. Because I think all of us, if we're living in the United States, are guilty of exploitation of human labor. If you look at the clothes you're wearing, if you look at the vegetables you're eating, if you're looking at the electronic products you're using, almost all of that is based on the exploitation of human labor somewhere in this world. And we're all guilty of that. And how that changes is a really difficult question, way beyond my comprehension. But the idea of hating someone because of their skin color, that's just an irrational thing. That's, again, I'm going to reiterate that I think and I'm going to disagree with Larry on the evil part. I think it's based on manipulation and exploitation of people's emotions so that other people can gain power. And so, you know, I think slavery was an exploitation of human labor to the point where it was so horrific and abusive that it's beyond comprehension today. But there are people throughout this world who are living in slave-like conditions, working in factories that are slave-like conditions. And unfortunately, we all benefit from that too, because we get cheap clothes and we get cheap products from it. So it's a big question, in my opinion.
This is Glenn, Larry, and Greer. Who else wants to get on? Okay, Glenn, it's your turn.
Yeah, this racism is not, it's artificial. It's not real. It's not real human, natural human being behavior. You put two African American children together, and they will they'll be the best of friends. They'll love one another. But it's when the parents say, "Well, look, you can't be friends with him, though." You have in history, you have Africans over a European country, Spain, where the whites love being governed by Africans. All the benefits of that government sprung to the European continent. You know, lighted streets, uh, water, baths, and science. It has color is used by a minority of people who wants power, and they can't have the power unless they divide people up, where they can steal all the riches, and while we're fighting over something ridiculous as color. And I do believe in America's Constitution, and the in the hope in the future of America. That's it.
Thank you. It's Larry's turn.
The problem, Stanton, is sometimes when we don't recognize evil because we are so caught up in a system. So even if it's a system of exploitation, that's still evil. You know, any laws and things that are created to keep a man down because of the color of his skin, that's evil. And so if we don't recognize evil, then we're going to dress it up and fix it up and make it appear to be something else. You know, the wall that second president George Bush waged against Iraq, that was evil. Well, war itself was evil, but that war was evil upon evil because they knew this so-called weapon of mass destruction didn't exist. So that was evil, and we're paying the price for it today. I've often wondered how Hitler was able to do what he did in Germany by killing 6 million Jews. I often wondered how he could do that. But as I read in a book, I think Deborah Davis, the America's Secret War on Cancer, something like that, she said that if it hadn't been Hitler, it would have been somebody else, because the German population had built up so much hatred towards the Jews, accusing them for every evil under the sun, that if it hadn't been Hitler, it would have been somebody else. So Trump is existing because Trump is the answer to a lot of hate. That's why people are still willing to vote for Trump today. Doesn't matter. He is the great white hope that they've been looking for. And it doesn't matter what he's done and what he may do. He is their answer. Thank you.
Do you have a
clarifying question? Yeah, so Larry, you think all of Trump followers are inherently evil and not stupid?
Well, stupid is in the eye of the beholder. Stupid could just mean being uninformed, you know. Evil, let me say it again. Evil goes contrary to the will of God.
Okay, so
if it's
again, my
not
question
good,
is,
it's evil.
okay, so my question is, you think the followers are evil?
Not necessarily. I couldn't put all of them in that category.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
I'm gonna intervene for a second. I think both Larry and the others are right. The evil is the top 1% that can fix the poor whites, like we read about. And the poor whites are stupid to fall for the evil is 1%. Anyway, I'm sorry to do that, but it's Greer and Phyllis and Stanton.
I'm gonna have to agree with Mr. Larry, because you don't set up a system deliberately to hold people down without calculating exactly what you're designing it to do in ignorance, by not knowing what you're doing. That is a direct calculation of wanting a certain outcome. Because when they started taking captives over to America, they were designing a system to steal their history, their heritage, their language, their culture. It was all done by design. They separated families. They divided the people. That's a plan. When you make a plan, you don't do a plan in ignorance. You do a plan with a purpose at the end. And this is why the history is not truly taught the way it should be, or basically taught at all in this country, because America is not ready to deal with the truth. And they say the truth will set you free. But look how they rewrote history in order to placate and satisfy and caress the psyches of the Southerners. They rewrote their own history so they could be okay with what happened. That was deliberate. That was evil. When you do something purposeful with the outcome that you have intended it to have, ignorance is nowhere near it. It's evil. That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Phyllis, it's your turn.
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who voted for President Obama who then turned around and voted for Trump. And part of the reason is there's a whole propaganda machine in this country, which I would argue they also had in Nazi Germany, that is teaching Americans with poor critical thinking skills to hate and fear other people in this country, not just Black people, Jewish people, Asian people, gay, trans, all the LGBTQIA people. They're all lumped into the same group to be enemies of the morally upright, allegedly morally upright white people. The Trump people, they are not a majority. There are more progressive, liberal people in this country than those people. I hope we can re-educate them, get them to see that they've been taught to fear things you don't need to fear. I feel like for me, anytime I have met a person from a specific group of people, whether I had preconceived notions or not,
Larry, I see you.
it has made me more open to the next person or group of people who are different from me that I will meet. It makes me sad if
Teresa, I see you.
people don't react that way, and they still keep hating and fearing because they go with this idea that there's a, oh, they're one of the good ones. they go with that idea instead of like, oh well, maybe I'm wrong about everybody because this person isn't like what I heard they're like. Am I at my 2 minutes? I feel like I talked a long time, Louise.
It's just about to go off.
Okay, I'm done.
Stanton, it's your turn. And Larry and Teresa, and I think the list should be closed in.
You've got Gigi and Glenn?
Greer,
And Glenn had his hand up for quite a while.
no, my screen, Glenn, and then the list will be closed. Larry, Teresa, Greer, and Glenn to wrap it up.
Okay, one thing that Phyllis mentioned, you know, about a propaganda machine as to why a lot of blacks who voted for Obama, you know, turned towards Trump, you know, as if black people can't think for themselves. And that's got to be some kind of propaganda, because these black people wouldn't dare turn from Obama and vote for Trump, you know. And that goes back, you know, to the days of old when people like, you know, Reverend L. Sharpton or Jesse Jackson was out front, and whites would accuse them of speaking for all black people as if black people couldn't think for themselves, you know. But a lot of blacks, you might say, turn away from the Democratic Party a lot because of the issue of abortion and the LGBTQA plus agenda. Now, to have a different view on lifestyle doesn't mean you hate somebody. You don't have to be homophobic. You know, if you think alcoholism destroys a person and destroys families, that don't mean you're a homo alcoholic. People just have different concepts of lifestyles and living. But it's a propaganda thing to try to lump everybody as being homophobic if they are against something. That is not true. And you know, as a Christian, I'm not made to hate. You know, I don't hate the homosexual community. Matter of fact, I'm teaching a Bible study now in terms of how us as Christians can seek to understand that community. So I think it's a propaganda cop-out when we try to say people are homophobic. No, not at all. Thank you.
Teresa. it's
Bill,
your
did I get jumped over, Bill? You had mentioned my name and then we went to Larry, so I don't know if I got jumped over.
I see, I missed you, sorry.
Okay.
You turn.
Yeah, I just wanted to get in my piece about this discussion of evil that Larry keeps bringing up. I'm not a theologian. I am not a religious person. I was raised in Judaism, but I am not a believer. This concept sort of then makes me think that there's no self-determination, there's no free will, that somehow there's some supervening thing that happens to people and they get possessed and taken over by evil, and that they're not in and of themselves determining who they are and what they are and how they operate in the world. So to me, I still believe that there's human will and self-determination, and people do these manipulative, horrible things for their own gains, for their own purposes, for their own success. And you can call that evil. I call it a lot of things. Again, this concept of biblical good versus evil, I don't believe in. I just think that people are at heart greedy and selfish and have their own motives that they want to fulfill. So that, and the other thing I just want to say is, based on what Larry just said, I don't need anybody to understand me. As a gay man, I don't need anybody to feel compassion for me, to have, you know, understanding of me. I just need you to leave me alone and let me live my life and let me be me. You be you, you do your thing, but let me do mine. And I don't need anybody's judgment as to how they perceive my life as far as their religious views.
Thank you, Stanton. Teresa. Teresa, Greer, and Glenn, and the coach.
Okay, I looked up this quote because we haven't talked much about the book itself, but um, you know, you think, well, why would people vote against their best interest? And LBJ said, if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, you'll give him someone to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. That pretty much sums up the book, but you know, Metzel gives us three very specific deep dive examples through education, health, and gun control. If those whites who are willing to be self-sacrificial, they really do think it's for the betterment of white people, even if they don't see that during their lifetime, they feel like they're building something for, you know, future white generations. And without realizing, I kind of agree with Dave Chappelle. Trump doesn't like you. You don't have any money. He doesn't want to talk to you. He has nothing. He does, you know, the one thing he didn't want was to be bothered with that. Now he'll say that he's for this, that, and the other, and there's fine people on both sides, but all he cared about was his own money and protecting his own butt. So, but if you do read the book, you'll just see that LBJ quote just keeps coming back of how people who are in desperate help and of need not taking advantage of that, because that's what those people do. And you know, you fill in the blank about whatever undesirable they think is getting over, but they don't want to see themselves in the same dire condition, you know, that they need affordable health care, or God forbid you take away their guns or something, because that's taking away their patriotism, that's taking away their rights. No, it's trying to help you not kill yourself.
Thank you, Teresa.
Perfect timing.
Greer is next.
South Africa, when apartheid ended, is a great example of how when things aren't guaranteed for you, how hard life is. And also that when you're white and you're poor, how you went along with things just because you benefited on some level, not really. Now the whites who could not afford to leave South Africa, they're living in those little shanty towns, trailer parks. I've seen like several documentaries where they went and they talked to all these white people who could not get out of the country. The whites with monies are still there living their lives. Those who were wealthy enough to or rich enough to leave have left South Africa, but now they're struggling just like every Black person who was unable to be educated, who was relegated to apartheid. They have that same struggle where they're struggling to eat, struggling to find a place to live. But they went along with everything because they knew, like getting a job at General Motors when you graduated out of high school, they thought that that was going to last forever. But now their relatives are feeling, their descendants are feeling the price of what they had to pay for everything that their forefathers have. They have to struggle. Nothing is guaranteed for them. And now they are living, seeing what Black people have to go through while they were in apartheid. There is no help for them. That's one place where either you make it or you don't. And the struggle is real. That's it. Thank you.
Glenn, it's your turn, and then goes for the wrap up.
You know, talking about the saying that the Trump people are evil. They have when they plan this, they white people all through history, they plan a scheme. Some people don't plan what they're gonna do week to week to Trump supporters. You know, they have no strategy. You know, these are victims, and far as saying that African Americans can't be brainwashed. That is crazy. You know, when advertisers will hire psychologists to sell something, and you see us go and buy some of the most craziest stuff, you are capable of being brainwashed. So, and I think when Phyllis was talking about those people who voted for Obama, she wasn't talking about blacks. She was talking about whites who changed their votes for Trump. I believe that's what she was saying. I'll just leave it at that and save my rest of the rap.
Thank you. According to my list, Mara and Cindy are the only ones who didn't speak. And Nancy too. I'm sorry. You usually speak a lot, so I didn't think that. I missed your commentary, but you had 2 minutes. So Mara, I asked you to go first for 2 minutes. Louise will time it.
I really enjoyed this discussion. So many views was shared, and I'm thankful to you for bringing this subject to a race. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Nancy, you have 2 minutes.
This is a very interesting discussion. It was initially supposed to be about why people vote against their own best interests, but obviously, as usual, in our discussions, it veered away from that and went all over the place. This week on Scoop show in the afternoon that I listened to, people were calling in about the man in, where was it? Kansas City or St. Louis, the man that shot the little boy that came to the door, rang the wrong doorbell. And this man called in, white man, old white man, called in and he said, I don't blame you. He said, because Black people are the cancer of the earth. All right. Then a lot of other people called in and, you know, he said he was a conservative Republican. He lived on the North Shore. Well, a lot of conservative Republican white men called in and said, I'm a conservative Republican, but don't put me in the same boat with him. All right. I am not like him. Okay. And you know, being at work, I couldn't, you know, I can't call in because I'm at work. But anyway, what I would have said had I been able to call in was that, you know, and a lot of people called in and given their discussion, you know, their opinions about, you know, who's good, who's bad. Blah, blah. What I've learned for having come to Erace, or I knew it before, but definitely from coming to Erace since June of 2007, is that there are good people and there are bad people. And they come in all sizes, shapes, and colors. Okay. And if people could just accept people for who they are, I don't have to be like you. You know, I get into trouble a lot because I will not be part of a cult, you know, and I'm an outlier in that regard. Sometimes I'm an outlier in my own family because I don't subscribe to some of their behaviors and some of their beliefs. And you do you, and I'm going to do me. And if that makes me an outlier in this group, okay, I'm going to be an outlier, but I'm just not going to blindly follow like sheep. But I think that the world would be much better if people would just let people be who they are and just see people. Don't stereotype people or group people or lump people. Just see everybody individually for who they are.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
The words True words. So Cindy, you have 2 minutes as well.
I totally support what Nancy said. She said it first, but I'll agree. If we could accept who we are, first of all, define who we are, what we believe in, and stick to it. We don't have to fight about it. We can state it and get on with our lives. How you live demonstrates your beliefs stronger than your words. So we do well to figure out what's important and act it. Enough said. Thanks. Good discussion.
Thank you. Now we're going to do 1 minute. If all people don't already see it on my screen. Glenn, you have 1 minute for wrap up.
The word evil means profoundly immoral and wicked. And that don't that kind of planning do not never come from the masses. That comes from a small group. When it comes to writing the Constitution, you think the majority of the people who wrote the Constitution, that was just a handful in one little room who wrote the Constitution of the United States. So when somebody make a plan of how they're gonna manipulate all the people of the world, that's a small minority. You can get them in one. You get them in one little apartment. Those plans. It's not a. It's not, don't think of the masses of people making plans. They have no plan. They move on the emotion, the winds of emotion, wherever it carries. And today we got so many mechanisms in the media, YouTube. They got so many ways to manipulate the minds of people today. So yes, people are being manipulated, being brainwashed, and even at sometimes, even some of us. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Greer, you have a minute.
We all have free will and we have choices. People choose to do bad things, regardless of reason. If it's something wrong, it is what it is. But sitting here listening to everybody just giving their ideas, I'm starting to wonder if the two-party majority system is actually something done by design, because it's like good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
And we always voting for the lesser of two evils. We really don't have a choice. If I give you a glass of water with dirt in it, and I give you a glass of water with feces in it, and you're dying of thirst, you have to drink. One is just lesser than the other in terms of, I guess, being putrid, but at the same time, do you really have a choice if there's only two things? Honestly, I think with Republicans and Democrats, they're working together and we're being played. That's it.
Thank you. Stanton, it's your turn for a minute.
Yeah, I just want to add that sometimes good people do bad things and sometimes bad people do good things. And, Hitler loved his German Shepherd and he was a vegetarian. So I think people are complicated. I think it's, when we reduce people to, like Nancy said, just stereotypes, then that's when we get into problems. And just because you're an old white guy doesn't mean you're a racist and crazy. And just because you're a 16-year-old Black kid doesn't mean you're going to threaten and harm somebody else. So it's the stereotyping of people. It's the reductive nature of our society that creates a lot of problems, again, that I think other people use to manipulate other people.
Thank you, Sam. Teresa, it's your turn for a minute.
Yes, thank you. I was very happy to revisit thinking about this book, and I recommend everyone to read it before they ban it. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion, it's your turn for a minute.
Thank you once again, Bill, for this very, very necessary topic. I found it very interesting that in the article, there was a statement that said the NRA in 1996 influenced a law that placed a ban on federally funded grants that would be directed toward more inclusive healthcare. The NRA, of all people, the NRA. So I found that very interesting. And I also believe there is an evil presence in our existence, in our world, and it's harmful to everyone. And I'd also like to say, it might sound like I'm rambling. We have to remember, and I think all of us in this particular group remember, a homosexual person, in my mind, first of all, is a human being, and I emphasize human being, and that's what needs to be placed at top of some of these people's attitudes that have this negative attitude toward people who belong to the LGBTQ plus community. Human being, first and foremost. Thanks, Bill.
Phyllis, it's your turn for a minute.
Yeah, I want to say first, thanks, Glenn, for understanding that I was talking about white people, not Black people. That seemed to be a huge trigger for that person. And also, I think it's ridiculous to talk about alcoholism and being gay in the same sentence. Alcoholism is a disease that can be treated. Being gay is an innate part of someone's being. And to go to this Bible study, what do you need to understand about people who are just human, as Marian just said? Why do you need a Bible study or a Sunday school class to understand everyone is a human being? It's boggling. And I really think the reason we can't have nice things in this country, like feeling safe out in public, having good healthcare, having good education, having good housing, is because white people would rather shoot themselves in the foot than let Black people have something nice.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Phyllis. I have a number of small comments sort of triggered by what
Did you
people
call on
said.
Louise?
No, I haven't gone
I'm
yet.
sorry,
I may be the
maybe
timekeeper, but I'm
confused
also part of this. Thank you very much.
me. No, I
I'm messing with you,
apologize.
Bill. Bill,
I
it's okay.
apologize profusely.
Hey, it's totally okay. And I was actually going to say what Phyllis just said about the alcoholism and homosexuality. What a ridiculous thing to say. And I'm pretty upset that Larry seems to leave right at the end of the meetings and he can never hear our rebuttals. That kind of pisses me off too. Greer, great analogy, your water. I love analogies. The water and only the two, political groups. And yes, we totally need something else to shake it up. But we're always at this crucial point where we need to vote to get someone horrible out, right? And so we jump to anyway, that's, I'm rambling. There was something else. Gosh damn. Oh, Glenn, are you sitting down? Because I agree with you about the evil, and I love the way that you found that it said, what was it, wicked and immoral? Yeah, and it is just a little percent of those really evil people, and they spread their indoctrination to the really stupid people, and I'll go with that. Most of them are stupid and ignorant. But yeah, good meeting, and thank you. It was a very smooth, nicely run discussion, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I had to refrain from commenting, but now I'll comment. when it's appropriate. I agree with Larry. The American Revolution was fought in part to protect slavery. For the reason you said, I read that many times. But the evil of the 1% goes back a long time. Before the Civil War, slaves were only owned by 1% of the population. That 1% was evil. They convinced the rest of the poor whites to die to protect their property. And it continues on to this day. So there's the evil at the top that convince the people who don't have proper education. I'm not trying to just look down on people, poor whites, but some of them might be evil, but most of them, I think the majority of them are stupid. And I loved what Teresa said. There was news clips at the time who interviewed poor whites, and I asked them if they wanted Obamacare, and they said, "Oh, certainly not. You want the Affordable Care Act?" They said, "Sure, we want that." So I needed a survey. Obama got blamed for a lot of things. I saw a survey that's 28% of Louisiana Republicans blamed Obama for the poor response to Katrina. And that's baffles the imagination. When someone mentioned Bill Russell, he was a great figure. He played in Boston at the time and still is very racist town. And he stood above it. He championed, he didn't refrain from speaking his mind. He became an advocate for civil rights. He lived in one of the wealthiest white suburbs in Boston, as he could afford to. He lives in Weston. I have tremendous respect for Bill Russell. And as an athlete, no one will ever equal his record of winning 11 world championships in 13 years of playing. We talked about Nazis, and the Nazi party never got more than 40% of the vote. They were always a minority party. They seized power by manipulation. I was also glad to hear there was the white man who shot the young black kid. His grandson, the grandson of the white man, talked about how his grandfather was indoctrinated by Fox News, and that led to his shooting of the black kid. So anyway, thanks for the discussion. As I said, I wanted to recommend, we're starting to watch a series on Netflix called Transatlantic. It's about the efforts to rescue whites, Jews, and intellectuals from Nazis at the beginning of World War II. You certainly see a lot of evil in that regard. Also, the Afrikaans who created apartheid, they knew that they were going to be vast minority in the population. They wanted to control the black majority. So they went to the United States and studied our Jim Crow laws, learn what he wanted to improve on Jim Crow. They would learn their mistakes, and they based their Jim Crow apartheid on Jim Crow. Hitler also went to the United States to send his agents to study Jim Crow. He based some of his racial views on Jim Crow. So thanks for everybody for your discussion. I learned a lot from your discussion, as I always do. So have a
Thank
good week, everybody.